Introduction. Tempo. This is the most powerful weapon you have as a jungler. Unfortunately, this is the most overcomplicated concept in League of Legends history. If I were to ask 100 people what tempo is, I would probably get 100 different definitions. Funnily enough, it's actually very easy to understand. And once understood, when you use it in your own games, which is what I'm going to teach you in this course, you will end games before they have even started. This is the true essence of what challenger jungling at the highest levels is about. Chapter 1. What is tempo? The real definition. Tempo is quite simply this: recalling to run at a resource. Now, the easiest way to explain what this means is to think about each champion at the start of a game. At the start of a game, everyone has the same tempo. Why? That's because everyone is running out of base at the same time, or they should be anyway. So this is how we measure tempo. Who is running out of base first? This is significant throughout a game because running out of base comes after doing what? In other words, what do you do in base? Or when you're in the fountain? You can spend your gold. You interact with the chat shopkeeper who gives you some items and you run out stronger than you were before. You evolve. It's very important to understand that everyone has a tempo. And as junglers, you always need to be aware of not only your tempo, in other words, when you recall, but also the tempo the enemy jungler has. When are they going to recall and where will they run out of base? Before we get into some jungling examples, I think the most salient examples to really explain what tempo is come from lanes. The reason being is because laners are always running back to the same resource, the lane itself. Why is the lane a resource? Because there is golden experience in the form of minions, turret plates, and the enemy laner or laners. This is consistent in every game. For example, when Zhao Xiaomeng, a challenger top laner on the Chinese super server, kills Renekton in this game, he is only thinking about recalling as soon as possible because look at Renekton's death timer. This dude is only dead for 8 seconds. In other words, XCM would have to recall right now to have the same tempo. But even that's not true anymore because Riot introduced movement speed bonuses to champions running out of base if they had just died, kind of like home guards. So if XCM was to recall even straight away, he would still be around 5 seconds later than Renekton running out of base. So what every good laner will do after solo killing their opponent, especially when the lane is still young, is recall ASAP. So after killing a few minions, and we don't need to worry about this in this course, XCM backs. This is Showmaker doing exactly the same thing. After solo killing Talon, who is dead for around 10 seconds, he clears these minions and recalls instead of staying for the next wave. Why? Tempo. Now yes, he might not have much mana to shove that quickly, but even if he had mana, he's going to base. Now you might be wondering why recall though? Like, why is it important to base after getting a kill if you're a laner? Well, what we are describing here through tempo is literally what a snowball is. A snowball does not happen when a champion sits on a Doran's blade until 10 minutes. It happens because after killing their opponent first early on, and they would have done so with the same gold spent, surely it would then be even easier to knock them out again when you've cashed in more gold at the shop. Well, of course, right? Each time you fight, you are increasingly stronger than your opponent, and there is one way it ends: a hard stop. Let's have a look at XCM in the same game. He has spent around 1,600 gold on items. The Renekton has spent 800 gold on items. And because he has such a lead materialized, a lead doesn't exist unless you have a lead in items. Please remember that. He is ahead of lots of other enemy champions. This allows him to quite comfortably 1v2 the enemy Renekton and Nidalee, and he ends up going 18-0 against some of the best players in the world, believe it or not. This is so critical in the early game because your items mean more. If you have 80 attack damage at level 3 and recall to buy 2 longswords, those 2 longswords represent 20 attack damage of your 100 total attack damage. That's 20%. That is legit. What happens if you have 140 attack damage and do the same thing? Well, that would mean those longswords account for 20 attack damage of your 160 total attack damage, which is 12.5%, a little bit less. So really early on, it's huge. This is the science behind early game snowballing, and we achieve this through tempo. In other words, recalling. Chapter 2. How do we apply tempo? This is the million-dollar question. How do we apply tempo in terms of the jungle then? If laning tempo is just about recalling and running back to lane, what is jungling tempo? And by the way, guys, because I'm such a nice guy, I want to help the homies out. There is a 20% sale on all coaching on my website for the rest of Season 13. So if you want to hit your dream rank by the time Season 13 ends, all you have to do is click on the I in the top right, and that's it. I hope you're enjoying the course so far. So jungling tempo. Well, all we are trying to do is replace minion waves that laners have with resources that junglers have, and these are jungle camps or objectives. Jungle camps, of course, being Gromp, Wolves, Raptors, Krugs, and both buffs, and objectives being the river objectives, Dragons, and Rift Heralds, or Barons. So in saying that, it is imperative to know when these camps spawn. So now we know what these resources are. Tempo for us junglers is literally recalling and running at one of these camps or river objectives. The key to mastering the art of tempo is timing. You don't want to recall and run at second dragon, for example, only to be there 20 seconds after a respawn. Why? Well, the enemy jungler can do it in that time. In that case, you are the one wasting time because you could have farmed your camps instead of running to an empty dragon pit. So what you're essentially doing is recalling and running at a jungling resource because you think it's more worth than doing another resource. We will get into plenty of examples in the upcoming chapters, but just to give you a sneak peek, in this game, I killed the enemy jungler, and after tilting a little bit because my F2 key was randomly unbinded, I then recall. I'm going to pause it here for a few seconds because I'm not going to show the outcome. You need to be able to visualize what I could do here with this tempo, with this recall. Remember, recalling allows us to buy items, and after killing your direct opponent, the enemy jungler, you will have more gold than them. But this can still happen if you kill the enemy laners as well, and the enemy jungler isn't getting as much gold. So it's almost like you're transferring the gold you got from a lane into the jungle matchup. But back to this, if Hecarim is running out of base with just a longsword, for example, I might have two longswords. In other games, it might be a longsword versus Dirk, or Amp Tome versus Sorcerer's Shoes, and I will reveal what happens here in the next chapter. How exciting. Now back to the timing. How do we actually go about getting this timing spot on? Well, we need to know how long it takes to recall, and how long it takes to run to that resource. Thankfully, recalling always takes 8 seconds. But what about running to all the jungle camps, the buffs, the dragons? There's too many. Let's relax. How long does it take to run to an inhib? Well, with no boots, it takes 10 seconds. So this line, therefore, represents 10 seconds. And this is all you have to do. You just have to envision these 10-second lines on the minimap. So if I copy that line from this bot inhib to Krugs, it will almost get me to Krugs. That means it probably takes me around 25 seconds to run out of base to my Krugs. What about if I run from Krugs to Raptors? Well, if we take this 10-second line and put it over the top, it looks about right. It takes me around 10 seconds. What about if I go from Raptors to the enemy blue buff? Well, because I have to go around a bit of terrain, it might take me a little bit longer, so around 15 seconds maybe. That's also about right. Being able to see your movement in terms of time is vital. Remember, just going from Krugs to Raptors takes 10 seconds. So let's think of a real situation, and I will cover all of these in the next couple of chapters. In this game, I started at red buff and cleared all my camps towards topside. I then killed the Jace and took the Scuttle Crab, and then I recalled. Why? Well, that's because my Krugs are spawning around 4 minutes 10 seconds. Shaco is a lot quicker than other junglers. Normally it would be around 4 minutes 20 seconds. So when I start my recall at 3:55, knowing the recalling takes 8 seconds and running to Krugs takes close to 25 seconds, that's around 33 seconds. I will get to Krugs around 4 minutes 25 seconds. Now, I'm never really that specific. I've just done that to show you the exact numbers. In my head, I'll probably just think of 30 seconds to base and get to Krugs. Timing is everything. And this continues throughout a game. Don't just think this is an early game thing. Camps keep spawning, buffs keep spawning, dragons keep spawning, barons keep spawning. Chapter 3, Attacking Tempo. There are two forms of tempo, attacking and defensive. Timing your recalls so you protect your own camps is one thing, that's defensive tempo, but recalling to run at the enemy jungler's camps, that's the next level up. And this attacking tempo is what we are now going to talk about and illustrate. Now, you don't just recall and run at the enemy jungler's camps because you can. You do it because you are significantly stronger than the enemy jungler and you can kill them on repeat, just like a laner would. This is critical to remember. Now, I'm not going to go through every jungler in the game and evaluate their early game strength. If you're a main of that champion, you should know if you can kill the enemy jungler or at least pressure them. But generally speaking, champions who have little DPS early game are the weaker ones, like Kayn, Zac, Echo, Evelynn. Compare these to Conqueror or lethal tempo junglers like Lee Sin, Viego, Nocturne, Trundle. There is a massive difference. Let's revisit that clip I showed you in chapter 2 when I recall to run at my Krugs. Can you see any attacking tempo I might have here? I know Lee Sin started on his red buff quadrant and cleared Krugs and Raptors. So could I use this in any way? Well, yes, I could decide to run there at a base. These camps will respawn, but what is stopping Lee Sin from being there? Surely he cares about his respawning Krugs and Raptors, and that's the thing. Because I'm AP Shaco, I really am a bad duelist, I would struggle to 1v1 a caster minion, so I think that's way too risky, and that's why I run to my Krugs. Now let's reveal what happens in that Hecarim clip. So quick refresh, I killed the Hecarim, and then knew he had done his blue buff quadrant, but nothing else because he only has 12 CS. So is there attacking tempo here? Well, I know I can kill him on his red buff. How have I arrived at that decision? And well done if you called it. Well, if he's done his blue buff quadrant, he will run to his red buff quadrant at a base. He is also dead for 10 seconds, which gives me enough time to recall myself, even though I do it a little bit later, and then sprint towards his topside after spending twice the amount of gold he has spent. Now, as I run towards topside, I see him on Raptors, which is a little bit weird. Maybe he thought I was going to take them. So now I know I actually have enough time to take a couple of camps along the way. If I go there instantly, then I'm going to be waiting a good 15 to 20 seconds for him to tank the camp and use his cooldowns, like his W. So doing blue buff and then crab is essentially me letting Hecarim hang bang himself. This guy AFKs 2 minutes later. In this game, a bit of context, I had already killed the Rengar on his top camps. He started on his red buff, and after that I recalled a little later. Eventually, I took Rengar's level 4 Krugs, this is why I'm bot side, and I ganked bot afterwards, killing the Nord. Now when I pause it, what would you do? We know Rengar is ganking top on vision. So is there any attacking tempo here? Can I recall and run at one of Rengar's camps? Now if you got this, I applaud you. You are cracked. So I know that Rengar's top camps are spawning around 5 to 5:30. It's already that time. So by the time he has finished his play top, I'm guessing he's going to run to his top camps if he's healthy enough. So I recall and run straight over there. Why should a Rengar with half my gold be allowed to farm against a Dirk double longsword Shaco at 5 minutes? Obviously he is way too low HP, so he has to bag himself. So when I see him on this ward near his Raptors, I know that he has to clear his Raptors, walls, and Gromp. By the time he has finished Raptors, I would have finished his level 4 Gromp, so I take that and then get ready to ambush him. This is another kill. But I fall into the trap of forgetting that jungling never stops. In the early game, death timers barely exist. So if you want to keep killing the enemy jungler over and over again, sometimes you literally have to recall after killing them so you can kill them again. Now having said that, can you see what I should have done here? I should immediately recall and run at his red buff. These next few examples are from student games, and what I want you to keep in mind is that when we attack, can we attack again? So when Adam kills the Shyvana on her top side, do we have an upcoming attacking tempo? Well, Shyvana started on her bot side, and surely after knowing Shaco could easily do her blue, and maybe Gromp, wouldn't she run to bot crab in that instance? So Adam could recall and run to that bot crab. But I like that a little less than recalling a little bit later for a different resource. Now, because we're in the attacking tempo chapter, this is one of Shyvana's camps that I'm referring to. So because she started on red buff, she could have started on Raptors, but it's whatever. Her Krugs will respawn very soon. That's what I would be licking my lips for. When do her Krugs respawn? Around 4:15. And it takes roughly 40 to 45 seconds to get there. So Adam can do blue buff and then recall and run there. It would have been even better in this game because Adam could counter gank the Shiv and he increases Shaco's ban rate. Now one player who might have to deal with their champion getting banned is Chaos, multi-rank 1 EE West, and in this game he kills the enemy Nocturne. Now Nocturne did his red buff quadrant and stole Chaos's blue buff. So out of base, where is Nocturne going to go? To his blue buff quadrant, and so is Chaos. Dirk Talon with red buff against longsword Nocturne, he ends up taking his blue buff, hits level 4, and Nocturne eventually gets pressured out of his bot side jungle. All you are doing is creating a 1v1 situation with the weaker enemy jungler. And just quickly, I know you might be thinking, well, what if the enemy laners rotate? Well, what's stopping you from just running out? You have to know your champion's limits, and that's a whole nother topic. The real big talking point here is what if Chaos is mid and bot lane didn't have this priority? Well, as long as your laners aren't losing lane already, you just have to show a bit of patience, that's it. They will eventually rotate over, especially knowing you already have a kill and are doing well. Herd the sheep into the jungle with you. Now we're going to stay with Chaos, and later in this game, the Nocturne is farming his Raptors. Dear me. So we're not actually recalling here, but I still think this is useful. Chaos is fresh out of base, and Nocturne, missing HP and mana, has clearly been on the map for a little bit. In other words, he's sitting on a bit of gold. So after Chaos secures his Raptors, what would you do? This is the same game as before, so Nocturne started at his red buff, and because Nocturne did not have his red buff here, surely he will go to that soon. So Chaos can do Krugs for level 6 and then sprint straight there. Against a level 5 Nocturne with his ignite and gold freshly spent, it's a free kill and Talon's ban rate increases. What about if I show you this clip? A random Maokai appears and Salty, the student, kills the tree, but how do we really put the tree into the ground afterwards? It's much harder to quickly assess situations like these, but all we have to ask is, where will Maokai go out of base? One quick glance at the minimap and we know his red buff is spawning earlier than blue buff, meaning he will probably choose to go bot side out of base. And if we apply a bit more logic, we just killed Maokai top side of the map. Is he really going to run back out here when the Fed Shaco is on this side? Most of the time as well, when you see the enemy jungler roaming into rivers and towards your side of the map, it's after they have cleared their camps on that side. In this game, however, Maokai had other ideas. So Salty invading Maokai's top side, I didn't actually like it for that reason, and because he has attacking tempo for Maokai's red buff. He can recall, spend the juicy gold he has, and take down Maokai again. And funnily enough, as I let this clip play out, you will eventually see Maokai on his bot side. Now, is attacking tempo only good for Shaco and Talon? Like, I can feel as if that question is getting asked, and to answer it, I want to retort with my own question. If you were a Lee Sin, or a Rek'Sai, or a Shadow Assassin Kayn, or a Nidalee or a Graves with twice as much gold spent as your opponent and a level 2 lead, wouldn't you do the same? It's what we play League for, right? To get kills and have fun. I don't really like clearing my camps that much. Let me quote myself from the start of this chapter. Now, you don't just do this because you can. You do it because you are significantly stronger than the enemy jungler, and you can kill them on repeat, just like a laner would. You are answering the question, can I kill the enemy jungler? If yes, where can you kill them? Can you create that? Chapter 4, Defensive Tempo. This is exactly the same as attacking tempo, but instead of running at the enemy jungler's camps, we are defending our own. This is one of the most important concepts to be cognizant of when you are showing to the enemy team on the minimap. Now, showing can be killing the enemy jungler, it can be killing the dragon or rift herald, it can be ganking a lane, and it can even just be full clearing towards a scuttle crab. How are you showing when you full clear? Because if the enemy jungler is doing the same thing and doing the other scuttle crab, logic has it that you should be on the opposite side of the map to them. So what we're getting at here is being able to protect your camps on the side of the map you are not on, because the enemy jungler might take them. We're reacting to the league concept of, if I do something on my side of the map, the enemy jungler will do something on their side of the map. This is a must, because if you give up your own camps, especially in the early game, you are most likely just trading with the enemy jungler. In order to secure leads, which is basically just having more gold than your enemy, you cannot then just give up your camps because they will close that gap. It's not going to be much of a lead anymore. Just to show you some real footage of this is T1's owner, and after killing the enemy bot lane and jungler, he shoves out the bot wave and decides to do dragon. Now, I'm just joking. Dragon in this situation? Well, what is Graves going to do if he sees owner run into the river, most likely to do Drake? Graves will run into Lee Sin's topside and take his Krugs, red buff and raptors. All of these will be up very soon. Owner knows this and is not happy with giving up that much just to get first dragon. And it's not like he's losing dragon anyway, so he secures his lead on the enemy jungler with some defensive tempo. And can you see this ping on owner's Krugs? That is the Graves pinging where owner is. I like to think about it like this. If I gank or invade and get a kill, my next move is recalling for attacking or defensive tempo. Attacking tempo is obviously stronger because you are killing the enemy jungler again and again rather than securing your camps. When you are playing for defensive tempo, the enemy jungler, just like Graves in owner's game, can be farming his own camps. He doesn't have to invade. It's just that he could, and that's really bad for owner. You are trying to get as much as you can from that play you make, like owner ganking bot, until you need to directly stop the enemy jungler on the other side of the map. In this clip, this is our Freezy, a master jungler from North America, and in this game he started on his red buff, cleared Krugs and Raptors, and then ran down to bot lane to dive. It's quite beautiful. He then kills the enemy Viego and the enemy bot lane. Pretty similar so far to owner's clip. Then he runs off into the river out of potential vision, which is also really smart because you might bait the enemy jungler into thinking you're staying on this side of the map for a while, and then he recalls. Oh my goodness, he could probably do the scuttle crab as well, but recalling is great. Why? I thought after first seeing this, he was recalling to apply some defensive tempo just like owner. So where did I think he was going to run out of base? To his Krugs exactly. These will spawn around 4:15, and Viego might get greedy knowing Graves' bot side. Instead, our Freezy runs to his blue buff quadrant, leaving his Krugs and Raptors open. I would not want to give up my level 4 Krugs and Raptors to a much weaker jungler. So in this game, after I kill the enemy jungler and AD carry, I decide to recall after doing my blue buff because I want to protect my level 4 Krugs and Raptors. Even though I'm a little bit late to Krugs, I can still either chase down the enemy Shaco or I can do my Raptors and run into his bot side. The thought process in my head when I jungle is, do I have attacking tempo? If not, then I ask myself, do I need defensive tempo? Getting the timing right for both is crucial. So when I looked at one of Griffin's games, who was rank 1 North America, when he kills the Shyvana on red buff, knowing she did her blue buff quadrant and her Raptors, he has attacking tempo on either Scuttle Crab, so he could just recall straight away, or after taking Shyvana's Krugs and then the bot crab. He could still recall here and attack Shyvana's respawning top side. Instead, he stays bot hoping a fight happens when it never should. Like the enemy bot lane, no Kindred can be here and they fight anyway, and in doing so, he gives up his Krugs. Now, it's not a big deal in this game because the coin flip worked, but securing your camps through defensive tempo is the 100% play. You didn't get kills to then give back that gold. For example, after I check Echo's bot camps in this game and they're not up, I know Echo is top side of the map. I then dive the enemy bot lane in this game and get a kill and an assist, and I know that the enemy jungler would have seen this. Everyone in a game has a minimap and can move their camera. So the enemy Echo should know that I cleared my red buff quadrant, meaning my whole blue buff quadrant is just sitting there. That is my defensive tempo. And when I actually go topside, I know Echo hasn't got his red buff and his Krugs are sitting there as well because he did some random gank mid. So I set up an ambush and kill him. But let's continue here. I just killed the enemy jungler. Do I have attacking tempo? Well, to really know, where is Echo running out of base? That's all you have to ask yourself. To his bot side. So I can comfortably recall and just run there. The great thing about this as well is that it acts as defensive tempo in a way, because in another game, this Echo could have easily ran at my Raptors trying to take them, thinking I might stay top side of the map after killing him earlier to farm my Gromp and walls. This is challenger jungling. And perhaps the most common example of defensive tempo, and this is the example I showed back in chapter 2, is when you clear all your camps, maybe gank a lane, do a scuttle crab, and then you recall to defend your respawning first quadrant. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate it. If you did enjoy this course and learn something, please smash the thumbs up button. It means a lot. And if you have any ideas for future courses, leave them in the comments. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer casting them down below as well. Don't be sure, bye.